Hi everyone and welcome to a new video comparison. This one comes with an audio commentary, which is a feature that some of you have been asking for. Just a quick reminder, our 4K video comparison demonstrates the video capabilities of two cameras and are part of the full comparison articles available on our website mirrorlesscomparison.com. In this video we're taking a look at the new Olympus OM-D E-M1X and E-M1 II, which aren't the most exciting cameras when it comes to video, but there are still a few interesting things to say about them. Both cameras have a 20.4 megapixel 4/3 sensor and are part of the Micro Four Thirds system. They can record 4K up to 30p and 102 megabit per second, or Cinema 4K at 24 frames per second and 237 megabit per second, although the latter is a variable frame rate and often found that it stays around 100 megabit per second instead. There is no sensor crop on the horizontal side when recording 4K, DCI 4K or 1080p. Internal recording is in 8-bit 420 and the HDMI output goes up to 422 color sampling, but the bit depth stays the same. For audio recording, you'll find a microphone input and a headphone output. Also, please note that this test was conducted with the most recent firmware updates available at the time, which is version 1.0 for the E-M1X and 2.3 for the E-M1 II. The two cameras share the same picture profiles and have a very similar color science. The E-M1X is a bit brighter and warmer, especially when using the natural or vivid profiles, while the Mark II model can shift towards a slight greenish tint, but none of these examples really show a big difference. Sharpness is the same, but the E-M1X displays a bit more contrast in comparison to the E-M1 II. The D4 value is good. You can increase it with a maximum of 2 steps if you want crispier details, although +2 does look a bit less natural to my eyes. Alternatively, you can record with the flat profile and increase sharpness in post, and here as well the footage from both cameras give you identical results. The high ISO performance is also very similar. The E-M1X footage looks a bit brighter once again, and both cameras can record at a maximum of 6400 ISO. The amount of noise generated is very similar at all levels. You can control noise reduction in 4 steps, and the higher the level, the less noise there is. The E-M1 II is a bit smoother, especially when using the normal or high level. The first real difference to talk about is dynamic range. They both have what Olympus calls picture mode, which is basically a flat profile that has a wider curve. It's not a real log curve, but as you can see it does give you more details in the shadows and preserves more highlights information. Here again the two cameras behave in a similar way. The E-M1 II does seem to retain slightly more information in the highlights, but it really is a minor difference. The E-M1X has a second picture mode called OM-Log400, which is a real log gamma and actually Olympus's first log profile. Unfortunately, it doesn't make a substantial difference. It opens the shadows a little more and reduces the saturation, but doesn't improve the highlights. In fact, if I adjust the highlight and shadow setting with the flat profile on the E-M1 II, I get a similar result to the OM-Log400. I took additional shots with the Log400 profile and color graded them in post, but honestly the benefits versus using the flat profile are very small. Although we call this video a 4K comparison, let's have a brief chat about Full HD. Unfortunately, the footage is not too impressive and details are much less crisp. You do have the option to record with an all-intra compression on both cameras, however. On the E-M1X you can also record up to 120 frames per second and have a slow motion result in camera. The E-M1 Mark II can only go up to 60 frames per second. As for rolling shutter, the sensor readout is pretty similar and both cameras deliver good performance here. The most important difference between these two cameras is the autofocus performance. The E-M1X uses phase detection at all times while recording video, unlike the E-M1 Mark II, and as you can see with this simple running test, the X model is much faster. Some of you have doubted this test because the E-M1 Mark II looks too slow by today's standards, but I can assure you that I repeated the test multiple times, and I can also add that I compared the E-M1 Mark II to other cameras before, and always got the same result. Even in low light with an older lens such as the 75mm f1.8, the result remains the same, and in this case the E-M1 Mark II simply refused to focus on the person's face unless I have pressed the shutter button. In Full HD the E-M1 Mark II is a bit faster but still much slower than the E-M1X. The flagship model is also faster with phase detection, proving stable and quick at changing the focus distance as the subject moves. The E-M1X has extra settings to control the autofocus performance, such as sensitivity and speed, which you can adjust depending on how fast or unpredictable your subject is. If you put the speed to the minimum, you can perform nice focus changes between two elements in your scene by simply touching the screen. But if there is one reason you really should consider one of these two cameras for video, it is image stabilization. They have 5-axis image stabilization on the sensor, and with select lenses that feature optical stabilization, you get better performance thanks to SyncIS. Now the difference in the results between the two models isn't huge, despite the E-M1X offering an impressive 7 stops of compensation with the sensor alone, or 7.5 stops with the 12-100mm Pro. When walking, for example, both cameras do an excellent job, even when going up and down a flight of stairs. That being said, I noticed that the MIS1 setting, which combines sensor and software stabilization, can produce smoother results on the E-M1X. Another improvement I noticed is that the E-M1X performs better when you are moving fast with the camera. In this example, I'm circling around my subject and then stopping. With the E-M1 Mark II, even when I try to slow down before stopping and remain as smooth as possible, I get this abrupt shift in my image most of the time. It looks like the stabilization has reached its limit, and when I stop, the camera resets the sensor position, which kinda ruins the shot. With the E-M1X, this was less problematic. It did happen a couple of times, as you can see here, but by controlling my movements and speed, I was able to get much smoother results and a better ending to my camera movement. I really like this example actually because in some moments it feels like I'm using an external gimbal. The E-M1X has a new setting called IS level. It allows you to adjust the level of correction that you need. For example, when panning, the lowest -1 setting makes the movement smoother, whereas +1 makes a static shot more erratic, as you can see here. It seems as if +1 works better if you're shaking more violently with the camera and the amount of correction needed is more drastic. Otherwise, sticking to -1 has produced the best results for me. I used the E-M1X for some of our recent hands-on videos, and of course it's not always perfect. Short focus distances, close-up details, and long focal lengths can influence the result, as well as how stable and comfortable you are when shooting. But really, out of all these specs, image stabilization is what makes a difference, and I don't think there is anything better out there at the time of publishing this video. So that's a wrap for this comparison. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments if you like the audio commentary and whether you would like me to continue doing it. If you want to know more about the E-M1X and how it compares to the E-M1 Mark II, please check our complete comparison on our website. You'll find the link in the cards or in the description. Thank you for watching and see you next time.